So everything I've been talking up to now has all been about the setup and the prep and essentially winning your first clients. It's great that you can get to that point, and when you win your first client, it is such a good feeling. However, it's immediately followed by a what the hell do I do from here in actually being able to do the work? So the next few lessons are actually going to go into a bit more detail about the structure of how you can organize your day, how you can organize your month, and essentially kind of the processes that surround how you're going to be doing the work itself. So I go into a bit more detail in these sections, and the first thing that I want to cover off is essentially how I structure my day. It's a bit of a weird one to start on because as a freelancer, in theory, you can do whatever you want with your day. You can start at whatever time you want, you can finish at whatever time you want. And as good as that is, I've kind of found a bit of a pattern with myself. Now, this may not apply to you, this may not even be useful for you, but I thought it's worth explaining and kind of sharing about how I go about structuring a regular workday for me. The way I try and balance everything is I have a spreadsheet, and in that spreadsheet I keep a log of all the hours in total that I need to do in any given month. As I've kind of explained previously with regards to the way I sell my time, I sell it by hour. So from that I know exactly how many hours I have sold and therefore how many hours of work I need to complete in a given month. What I've then done is essentially divide that number up by the number of working days that are in the month. So regardless of the number of hours that I do or don't sell in a given month, what I end up doing is on a given workday, my goal is to complete 6 paid hours of work a day. It's one of those things which I've looked back on and I'm thinking, oh, really? I feel like it should be more, especially because, a day is 24 hours long. And for me, 6 hours is kind of a comfortable number of hours to hit. The reason for that is that is 6 paid hours. On top of that, you are going to have other stuff happen. Now, what that other stuff is tends to vary quite considerably, but that is things like sales calls, that's things like traveling, that's things like additional email or projects taking longer than you anticipated. There's also the unusual items like getting stuck in traffic, your car breaking down, your laptop kicking into an update when you really don't want it to. And all those things on top of actually doing the paid work can really add to the time. So realistically, on most days, although I'm only doing 6 hours of paid work, in reality, the number of hours that I'm actually working is easily 7.5, 8, if not considerably more on some days. So in saying all of this, it's firstly dependent on how many hours that you have sold. If you only have a couple of clients, then this may not affect you. But ultimately, if you are looking to work full-time in freelance digital marketing, then you are going to need to organize how many hours a day you are completing in order to be able to ensure that you are getting to get to the end of the month and have everything done. Certainly there's some days where I might do a few hours less, and there's other days where I do a few hours more, but overall it balances it out. Because what I know is that ultimately if I can hit those 6 hours a day, by the time I get to the end of the month there'll either be time left over or I'll sort of finish the month comfortably. It's also a case that if in those instances you have a succession of days where you might get 3 or 4 hours done, and that is quite possible based on just other stuff happening, that can really build up close to the end of the month, so end up having to do really long days in order to be able to get it all done, which just isn't a pleasant situation to be in. So in this instance, it's not a case that you have to do 6 hours. That's something that works for me. Ultimately, after a few months of doing this and going through the process, you will start to build up a bit of a picture about what works for you on a daily basis and also what time works for you as well. Most businesses will still operate on a 9 to 5 basis. So although it is good to say, I'm going to do all my work really early or really late, you are still ultimately going to get most of your client communications coming through from 9 to 5:30 on weekdays. That's also not to say that you are constantly switched on both on those times and any other time you're working. Having that switch off time and where you're just not thinking about work is critically important, and it's something we'll cover in a later lesson. But it's also in saying this that the whole purpose and the whole advantage of freelancing is so you acquire that degree of flexibility about what you can do and when. So although I might be working 6 hours in a day, that is very rarely one solid block of 6 hours. That's because most of the time I will do 3 hours and then I might go to the gym. That might be because I do a couple of hours and then I go into town to run some errands. On top of that, it's also a case that sometimes, if you really, you might be having a bad day or you might be having a great day and you just want to go and do something else, feel free to do so. It's quite a weird feeling, and it's a sort of almost guilty sensation that suddenly when you're away from your desk and you're not doing work, you're not switched on, that somehow that is a bad thing. But as I say, with freelancing, that is the whole point of being able to do this, especially for me and in terms of the goals that I want to pursue. So as long as, in my mind, I fit in those 6 hours, one way or another during a day, that is what works for me. See what your working day is like, and if it is not working for you, then adjust it. You can keep tweaking these things for months and months and months. It's never set in stone as to how you should or shouldn't work, but that's my experiences of how it goes and how I keep things organised.